Look at the sheer mechanical violence of early modern communication. Every slam of the press was a physical transmission of survival data across the Atlantic. On December 13, 1720, the American Mercury published an issue that served as a live intelligence briefing for the colonies. Raw dispatches from the edge of civilization crowd the columns, filling the page with a dense, unbroken wall of text below the decorative headers. Scanning down, we see intelligence routed from Vienna, Hamburg, and The Hague, a massive reporting network funneling into Philadelphia. Embedded in this single document is evidence of 3 distinct global shocks, all detonating at the exact same moment. The first is a biological crisis, triggering rapid, localized demographic collapse along the Mediterranean coast. The second is a sudden, violent financial rupture radiating outward from the trading houses of London. The third is massive military mobilization and religious fracturing across Eastern Europe and North Africa. By analyzing these dispatches as raw, unverified data without the luxury of hindsight, we expose exactly what an early modern world on the brink of systemic collapse looks like. The most immediate threat mapped in these columns comes from the coastline of southern France and the Iberian Peninsula. A dispatch intercepted from Orange delivers the initial assessment of a rapidly spreading biological contagion. This specific paragraph isolates the epicenter. It states bluntly that 50,000 persons have perished at Marseille. The text shows containment has failed, the plague has spread to Aix, and the governing infrastructure is disintegrating as parliament and principal inhabitants flee to St. Reims. A second dispatch routed through Geneva corroborates this, providing a tighter, highly specific statistical window into the lethality of the outbreak. Look closely at this Geneva report. It confirms the contagion destroyed 16,000 persons over a single 48-hour period on the 15th and 16th. This chart illustrates that 48-hour casualty rate against typical outbreak metrics of the era. The 1720 variant presents as a vertical spike in mortality. Faced with a pathogen capable of that velocity, neighboring states rapidly adapted their diplomatic protocols. The paper documents these defensive measures in a Lisbon dispatch detailing rigid maritime quarantine laws. The protocol is absolute. Any ship from Marseille or neighboring harbors is denied entry and commanded to put to sea again. The speed of this demographic collapse forced governments to discard standard trade relations. They defaulted to complete militarized maritime isolation simply to preserve their populations. While the Mediterranean faced biological ruin, a second contagion was devastating the English capital, this one purely financial. Ships returning to the colonies carried fragmented reports of the spectacular collapse of the South Sea bubble. This column, datelined New York, logs the incoming data on the extreme volatility of South Sea stock. The dispatch records a massive drop to 110, followed immediately by an erratic rebound up to 300. Investors experienced a violent financial whiplash as the asset value sheared off entirely before spiking in panic. The paper directly notes the physical toll of this mathematical chaos, highlighting fears that it will be the ruin of thousands. Back in London, the reality of that ruin played out in the streets as investors from every social class found their paper wealth vaporized. To contain the panic, the South Sea Company attempted drastic institutional intervention. This London dispatch captures the South Sea Company's General Court agreeing to absorb massive liabilities by taking in annuitants at 400%. The Mercury also recognized that this localized crash wasn't contained to a single company. Looking at this block of raw market data, we see the collateral damage ripple outward, destabilizing quoted prices for bank stock, African stock, and Royal Exchange insurance. The presence of these colonial and international stock prices in a single dispatch confirms that capital was already a global network. When the London market buckled, it triggered wealth destruction felt immediately from the ports of New York to the trading houses of the African coast. Beyond the plague and the collapsing markets, the paper maps out a third theater of instability, defined by troop movements. Southern Europe was actively preparing for a massive offensive military deployment. This dispatch from Cadiz details the command structure of the Marquis de Lade's upcoming Mediterranean expedition. The objective is explicit. An army of 30,000 men is being formed to conquer the kingdom of Fez on the Barbary coast. Mobilizing an amphibious force of 30,000 soldiers required immense naval infrastructure, turning these ports into sprawling logistical engines of war. Moving inland, this Vienna report reveals severe domestic friction. The emperor has issued a mandate forcing the clergy to dispose of newly acquired estates. Just below, the text logs the Earl of Cadogan's diplomatic attempts to halt the violence actively being committed against Protestants. The eastern frontier was equally volatile, with critical intelligence routing through Poland. This dispatch out of Warsaw warns that an abundance of malcontents within the Polish and Lithuanian armies are fracturing the military structure and forming a new confederacy. Massive standing armies mobilizing in Spain, religious factionalism in Vienna, and deep military mutinies in Warsaw combine to create a highly combustible geopolitical environment, entirely separate from the plague or the collapsing stock market. Stepping back from these individual columns, we can see the full architecture of the crisis. This single issue tracks a plunging global market, a vertical spike in biological mortality, and the rapid accumulation of standing armies. Any one of these events would test a civilization. Their exact synchronicity meant that governments were fighting economic ruin, infectious disease, and potential war at the same time. Reading these reports sequentially removes the safety net of hindsight. It forces us to process the data exactly as it was received. For the colonial reader standing in Philadelphia in December 1720, turning this page, there was no guarantee the European continent would survive the decade intact. The American Mercury remains a precise, unfiltered ledger of a global system simultaneously facing biological, financial, and military ruin. It is a real-time record of a world on the brink.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print. No modern gloss, no modern hint, just black and white